course.
Mm.
Right. So before we start, let me let me tell you guys a brief ground rules. So all of you, please be on mute when you're not talking, because that will reduce the background noise. Otherwise, with all of us onto the call, it would really become quite noisy if you're not on mute. Okay. So unless you need to ask any question, please be on mute. And you can interrupt me and ask questions during the session. You don't need to wait and hold on to your questions till the end of the session. Okay. So keep it interactive in case you don't understand anything or you want more details about it, or you have a question regarding anything. Feel free to unmute and ask the question. You could use the chat window also to maybe ask your question. But yeah, I would prefer to hear from you, right, because that would be a better way of communicating. Okay, so that would be it, and all the sessions would be recorded and then uploaded onto your portal. You'll get access to the recordings, so you don't need to worry about missing out on anything. So just focus onto the session, and then make sure that in case you miss out any session, by the next day, make sure that you watch that recording and then be ready for that session. All right. So having said that, let's start today's session. Okay. Now, so today I would be starting the course. So this would be the first session. I hope a lot of most of you have actually attended the demonstration as well. So today is actually the day where we are starting the course. For the next 2-3 days, what I'll be doing is I'll be explaining you about how the industry works. Right. So we are looking at we're trying to get the bigger picture. So we're trying to understand who are all the other roles or people who will be part of an IT project. What do they do, and what is expected out of us? We'll get a lot more clarity, and we'll also understand what are the phases of a project. Right. So there would be a requirements phase. There would be a design, development, testing. So what all we do as each of those phases, who is responsible for that, and where do you contribute, all that you'll get a lot more clarity on. Okay, so so first 2-3 sessions, they're not directly involved with the role of a business analyst. We are trying to understand how things work in the industry. So a person coming out from a non-technical background, this would be an good way to gain that understanding, right? So having said that, let's start the course. So the next 2-3 days, I'll help you understand how is a client's IT team organized. Now, any organization you take, like a bank or a retail organization, right? So there would be multiple business teams, and they would be using multiple applications. So to support those applications, you need an IT team. So how is that team structured? Who are all the people in that team? What do they do? So we'll get that overview. Then we'll also look at an IT company, right? So somebody like an Accenture or a TCS, right? How are they structured? Who are all the various people in that? Like who is a project manager, an account manager, a delivery manager? You'll understand what do they do and what is the structure of a typical the vendor organization, like an Accenture. And then we'll look at a project also, and then see who are all the key people in a project, what do they do, and how do they interact, and ensure that the projects are completed on time. Okay. We'll also spend some time and understand the SDLC lifecycle, software development lifecycle. Okay. So it basically tells us, what all phases of a project are. Like, there would be a requirements phase, there would be a design phase, development phase. So what all activities are done as part of each of those phases, and who is responsible for those activities, we'll gain that understanding. Okay. So that would be the agenda for the next 3-4 sessions. Right? Once we gain this, then we'll actually get into the role of a business analyst and then start understanding it. Okay. So for now, let's first get our basic overview about how things work in the industry. This will make you a lot more comfortable when you get into when you get into your job, right? So you don't have to figure out, okay, now what is a project manager expected to do, or what is a technical architect expected to do. You'll clearly know that this is what I need to do, and this is what these other guys needs to do, right? So that this orientation would help you in getting that comfort level. Okay. All right. So moving on, a typical client organization looks like this. Okay. So there would be a lot of business units. So any organization you take, there would be business units supporting them. Like let's take this example throughout, right? So I'll talk about Citibank as a client, and then let's pick up Accenture as a vendor. Okay, so we'll work with this two organizations, right? So let's say that Citibank wants to implement a mobile banking application, and Accenture is helping out in creating that application, right? So we'll take this example consistently so that we can relate our learning to that example and then see what would have we done in this particular scenario. Okay, so this theme of mobile banking application would continue throughout our session. The reason I've taken that example is because we all use mobile banking app, so we know pretty much what kind of functionalities a mobile banking app would have, right? So we'll stick to that notation. Now consider the client organization. Now if you look at a bank like Citibank, okay, so there would be multiple departments in it, multiple business units. So there would be a retail bank, there would be a commercial bank. Commercial bank would cater to the organization's banking needs. Then there would be capital markets. So they would invest in shares and then do some business. So there are multiple business units. Okay, so each business unit would be supported by some applications. Like if you have visited a branch, there would be employees and then they would be using some software, right? So we call that as a teller machine or a core banking machine, a core banking application. And then there are ATMs. ATMs also has software, right? All these applications needs to be supported for the business to run. So you need a IT team who would overlook all these applications and then take care of them, right? So that is where your IT organization would come in. Okay, so their responsibilities would be to develop new applications. If you want to develop any new application, so that development would be handled by the IT team. Okay, so you want to change some features or add in some additional features to the existing applications, so it would be the responsibilities of the IT team. They would also ensure that the application is tested thoroughly before you implement it into the final, you give access to the final users. We call that as a production environment. So before you move it into production or give access to the end users, you need to test it thoroughly. Okay, so testing is also another responsibility of the IT organization. Then they need to support your application as well. Okay, so when I say support, okay, so it's basically providing that help desk functionality. Let's say some of the users find out that they find a defect, they find a bug in the system, something is not working correctly. So what should they do? They cannot come over and then talk to the development team directly because they don't know who has developed it. So they will reach out to the support. There would be a customer care number or maybe an email ID which they can reach out to, and they in turn would coordinate and ensure that the defect is fixed, and then the updates are coming in. Okay, then they also need to do the housekeeping activities, like what if the size of the database increases, so they have to add in more data, more hard disk to that application. Or let's say one of the server is down, right? So they have to go back and then restart the server. So they need to monitor the applications. Okay, they need to maybe run some batches. Like if you look at a deposit system, so you need to uh, update the interest on a daily basis. Okay, so who has to do that? So there would be a program which has to be run. So the operations team would do that activities. So all these gamut of activities would be considered as your support activities, ensuring that the business users are happy with the application, then ensuring that the application is right. So broadly, these are the four things which the IT team would do. Okay. Now, how are the teams organized? Generally, the IT organization is clearly separated into these three teams, which focuses on the development and any enhancements also, right? So let's say the business wants a new application. They want it to, they would reach out to the development team. They say, you know what, I need this application. Outsource it to a technology vendor like Accenture and then get it done. Because these guys directly cannot talk to the technology companies because they don't understand. There are a lot of things that and these guys are not experts in getting their requirements out. So that is where the development team holds that responsibility. So it gets that requirement from the business team, and then it coordinates internally or with an external vendor like Accenture, and then gets it developed. Okay. Once it's developed, then it passes it on to the testing team. Okay. Now the testing team would do a thorough testing of the application. Okay. So they would test the system end to end, make sure that it's defect free, and only once it's defect free, then it would say that the system is good to be used, and then hand it over to the operations team. So the operations team would finally implement it, install it into the production environment, and give access to the end users. Okay. So this is the process which is followed. So any project is initiated by the business team. It comes to the development team. So these guys do the development, or it outsource it and get it done, developed. Then they give it to the QA team for testing it. And then you would give it to the operations teams to maintain it. Okay, so that is the process. All right. So you need to understand a few key roles in this whole process. Okay. Now the head of the business is generally called as a project sponsor, because this is the guy who is basically paying for the project, and then he would assign some people to the project to give you the detailed requirements. We call them as a subject matter experts, SMEs. Okay, so you'll keep hearing this term, SMEs. So from your role point of view, you will interact with these people, understand the requirements, and make sure that they're okay with the final system that you're delivering, right? So from your point of view, or at least from a business analyst role point of view, a lot of your time you'd spend interacting with these SMEs. I would say close to 30-40% of your time goes in talking to these guys and understanding the requirement. Okay. Once you understand the requirement, then you will document it into a business requirement document, and then it gets validated by the SMEs and then the solution owners. Right, but this is one set of people you would generally interact a lot with from the business side. Okay, then there would be representation from the development team, the QA team, and the ops team, which will give their requirements. All these are considered as non-functional requirements, or we use this term NFR. Okay, so from the business you'll get the functional requirements, and from the IT team you'll get the non-functional requirements. Okay, so this is how a typical the typical roles would be, right? And we'll get into the details, what functional requirements are, how do you interact with the SMEs to get to the functional requirements, and what non-functional requirements are, how do you get it from the rest of the team. So you'll understand that through the course, right? So today's is anyway an overview session, so I'm just giving you an overview that these are the key people that you will interact with, right? So to summarize on this slide, every organization would have business team. They would have some applications to support their business. Those applications are developed, tested, and then maintained by the IT team, right? And from a role point of view, you would interact with the SMEs to get the functional requirements, with the the dev, QA, and operations teams to get the non-functional requirements. Okay, clear about this? Any questions? All right, good. Uh, so now let me also spend some time explaining how the process for uh, you know identifying the vendors would be, right? So now I've said that Citibank is implementing this application, and they would interact with Accenture to get this done. They would leverage the help of Accenture to get it done. Okay. Now, but why Accenture? Why not Cognizant or an Infosys or an IBM? Right. So you need to figure out whom should I give this project. There is a cycle which happens through this overall for identifying the vendor and then finalizing onto the project scope, right? We call that as a pre-sale cycle, or the proposal cycle, wherein even before the contract is signed, there are some activities which should happen. Okay, so first step, the business unit head would say that, okay, we need to approve this, we need to implement this project, and I need your help. Okay, so the business unit head would assign somebody from his team and then say, this guy would help you with the functional requirements from a functional point of view, and then you develop it. Now the development team cannot develop it on its own, right? So why? Because it might not have enough resources. Okay, it might not have enough people who know about mobile banking application. Okay, so they have to know iOS technology, they have to know Android technology, right? So all those kind of technologies you might not have in a typical client organization like a Citibank. So what it does is it would want to take help from one of the technology vendors. Now for each and every project, they cannot reach out to all the technology vendors available. So there are thousands of technology vendors. If you look at IT services companies, there are thousands of companies. Now Citibank cannot go to all those 1,000 vendors for each and every project they do. So what do? Is they generally select some 4 or 5 vendors and then say, for all my requirements, I'll just reach out to these 5 guys, right? They are called as the preferred vendors. Okay. Now preferred vendors are the identified set of people who will who Citibank will work with, right? So they would sign a long-term contract called as an MSA, Master Service Agreement. Okay, so this basically tells us that Citibank will work with this vendor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and with all those 5 vendors, they would have this MSA signed, Master Service Agreement. So it's basically a contractual document which tells us, these are the terms of engagement. So these are the billing rates, these are the SLAs, right? And any project you implement, you should follow these activities. So it's not at a project level; it's more at a relationship level that your MSA agreement would talk about. Okay. So once the MSA is signed off, okay, then the business teams would come out with specific opportunities. Like if you pick up this mobile banking application, then these guys would say, what, I have this need for a mobile banking application. Now all five of you, the vendors what are identified. Let's pick up names here. Let's say there is Infosys, there is sorry. So there is Infosys, then there is let's say IBM, there is Accenture, let's say TCS, and Cognizant. Okay. Now let's say these are the 5 vendors which are there, which have an MSA with Citibank. Okay, it could be any number. It need not be only 5. It could be some 10. It could be 15 vendors also that Citibank could sign MSAs with. Okay. Now, whenever an opportunity comes in, like the mobile banking app, these guys would say that I have this requirement. Now you guys tell me how much would you charge me for completing this for delivering this requirement, and what would be the terms of engagement, right? When can you deliver, and what how are you going to execute? All those details it will ask questions on. Okay, so that document is called as an RFP. So basically, Citibank would release an RFP, request for proposal. So it's basically requesting proposals from these vendors to meet that requirement of mobile banking application. Okay, so it's something like the tender process. If you know about the competitive bidding, right? So rather than just go to one single guy and ask him to deliver it, it is sending it to 5 guys so that it gets the best out of if there is competition, it is going to get the best value. Right, so you'll get the best price, it will get the best quality, it will get it done faster, because people are competing against each other, right? So it will publish that high level requirements or features into this RFP document, and then say this is my scope, and these are my tentative timelines. Now you tell me how you are going to deliver. So all these 5 guys would respond to this RFP. So there is a RFP response as well. So, response to RFP. Each one of these 5 vendors would respond to the RFP, saying that I would implement in 1 million within 3 months. Other guy would say I would do it in like 1.5 million. It would take 4 months. So all those and this would be the architecture, or this would be the overall way it would be developed. So all those details would come out. Okay, so all these 5 responses would be submitted to the client. They would evaluate it. So they would find out, they would read through all those 5 responses, and then they would select one of them. Let's say in this case, Accenture is selected. Okay, then Accenture would be awarded this project. They would say, what? Okay, I'll give the project to you. Now you go ahead and then implement it. Okay, so there would be a contractual document signed there again, which we call it as a statement of work. Okay. Now, statement of work lists down the scope of the project, what all activities would the client and then the vendor do, what are the timelines, any the project specific SLAs or terms and conditions. All that would be covered as part of your statement of work, SOW. Okay. So this is an important document for you as well, because you'll have to refer to this document to understand the scope of the system. Okay. So once the SOW is signed, then the teams are onboarded and the project would start. Okay. This is the process even before a project is awarded or you get onto the project team. This is what would happen. Okay. Any questions? You guys are clear with this? Guys? Okay. Anyway,
Yeah, Raju. Hi, this is Pooja here. Yeah, so like MSA and SOW, are these the same documents or if they are different?
No, MSA does not talk about any particular project. It just says that you should work at this billing rate, Then
Oh,
these you should submit all these reports to me, right? These are your service level agreements. So all that is at a engagement level. Okay, they're not talking at one particular project. So the project specific details, you have to deliver these 10 features, like, in a mobile banking app, I should be able to check account balance or transfer funds, or all those details at a high level would come in as part of your SOW, right? So every project would have one SOW.
okay. Okay.
MSA, there will be only one document between the client and then the vendor. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Yeah, Mohsin, I think you have a question. Go ahead. Hello?
No, I'm good.
Okay, great. All right. So that's some basic overview about the client organization.